Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Murdoch. This is Webinars with Wendy, and we have Ida Hammer here again tonight. I'm going to keep this intro really short so we can get right to our topic. Welcome, Ida. Thank you once again for joining me in this crazy night. I was running late at the barn, which is what I'm laughing at. So, Ida, just for those who may not know you, and I don't know how there can be anybody left that doesn't know you, but just in case, can you just give her a little tiki tour of your background, and then we'll dive in.
Yep, sure can. Had horses since I was a little kid. Always did all kinds of stuff with them. Jockey race horses, we had race horses, all that stuff. Fast forward, we had a couple of navicular horses, like several years apart, but the first one we treated traditionally and did all the stuff that we were told to do and everything, and that didn't really ever help her. So when the second one got diagnosed with the same, like the horrible disease, we needed to find a better way. So we spent the first $1 million on the first horse.
Oh my God.
So we had
and I have a kitty. I'm going to do something with the kitty while you keep talking, because she's going to just drive everybody crazy. Okay.
Anyway, so fast forward, I'm like, we did find a better way. And took my first classes, 18 years ago. And ever since, I'm like, so I trim horses all over the country, teach all over the country, and have several graduates that are they're rock stars. So anyway, I'm happy to
she'll just keep squeaking. So you have to put her out. Okay, sorry. What were you saying?
I don't recall.
I have not. This is not alcohol. It should be.
Yep. So I think we've covered it all. Like I did one intro before you got here, and then I just kind of told everybody that I got started like with the navicular horses, and now I teach all over and trim all over and have the best graduates in the world. But
yeah, how many graduates do you have now?
Last I counted, I'm thinking there might be like 140 or 150, but I'm not sure.
Wow.
I'd have to go.
Somebody's saying your students are amazing. And if somebody wanted to find one of your students so that they could have their horse trimmed, how would they do that? Just by the way.
So I've started a list on my website, but it's really not even close to done. So if there's not anybody on the list on my website, then just contact me and then I can hook them up with somebody or try to find them somebody that's close.
Okay.
But I'm like, and I am biased, but it was like as Laura Prowett just said about like my graduates, I'm like, I am biased, but they are awesome. And they continue their education. They work together as a brainstorming. I'm like, we have 3 get-togethers. In fact, you're coming to one. So yeah.
I am.
So yes. So we have 3 get-togethers a year. And so we can brainstorm and continue our education with other avenues. And like, we're lucky enough to have you in May in North Texas. So
yeah, looking forward to it.
Excited about that.
All right. So tonight we're going to talk about how hooves change in the seasons, right?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have a PowerPoint?
Ready?
Okay.
I do.
Hang on. Let me
share my screen.
Co-host. Oh, it looks like you're already co-host.
She already made me co-host because
awesome.
The video went really.
Okay.
I want to share the screen and then I have to get my PowerPoint up quick.
So as we go along, if you have any questions, just remember to put them in the chat or the Q&A. I will interrupt Ida on a regular basis and ask her questions, your questions.
Can I get this? Oops, I can't get to my big part. How do I?
Yeah, you can.
This?
Play from start.
I know, but I can't. I know, but I can't get the, I can't.
We saw your pointer go there.
I know it, but I can't get to the top where it makes it bigger. So how can I take this top stuff off?
You have to hit play from start.
No. So I can, let me try something else. But, there it goes. Yeah. So see how smart you are. So
I just read it.
Well, I didn't think I could, the toolbar is across the top for like this, the sharing the videos and everything. It was across the top. So it's covering my stuff where I could get to it. But anyway,
okay, here we go.
So here's the topic. And this is, these are my website where you can find out like different trimmers and like, and also email me and ask me. And then I have online classes now, which is on Thinkific. And so I've got started with that.
You're on Thinkific too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're Thinkific alike. Okay. Sorry. So,
It's silly
so
night,
I will start
okay?
off.
It's first day of spring.
It is the first day of spring. And besides that, it's like we have to have fun. Otherwise, everybody be nodding off on us. So there's horses have all different kinds of seasonal changes in their hooves. And so every season brings its it is pluses and minuses. So I had to take a picture of this. This is two of my favorite horses, like they're out playing in their snow. So, but the snow makes pretty hooves and it makes clean hooves. And like it's actually snow is like good against fungus and all that stuff. But I had the snow first because then we're going into the mud.
Ah,
So spring brings with us a lot of issues with the mud and everything that it brings. And so I'm going to talk a lot about the externals first, but then by the time I get to the end, I'm going to talk about the diet and all that stuff that goes with it because it's all related. So we have to kind of stick, like getting you some ideas here. So the problem is with mud, it softens the hoofs and it softens it quite a bit. Last year at the APC in Illinois, and it's where our graduates get together and do experiments. So we did an experiment. And it was pretty awesome. Really, we took 3 cadaver legs and we put them in a pot of just regular water overnight, about just above the fetlock, and we just let them soak about probably not even 12 hours, about 10 hours, and not unlike a lot of the horses that are dealing with their paddocks now. Is there's a lot of water standing in some places, mud and soaking. So what we did is we soaked 3 cadaver feet. One was a thin-soled cadaver, one was a medium-soled, and one had thick soles. And so the whole point of that was just to try to see. We already kind of surmised that horses that are on the mud and saturate their feet, that they become quite a bit softer. And so one of the things that is concerning for thin-soled horses and even medium-soled horses for that matter. So it's like, I'll go to the next slide here. Oh, never mind. I'm going to go 2 slides, maybe 3. This side. I misplaced that slide. So what happens in this neck of the woods, and probably like maybe you guys get a little bit in Virginia too, I don't know, but we get these ruts in the mud and then it freezes, and it freezes into this kind of stuff like this. So when you take those hooves that are so saturated, and then next thing you know that they're walking on these jagged mud clots, you're really putting your horse up for bruising and abscessing and all kinds of stuff. And so that's what we did with the experiment that we did for the class. Is we soaked 3 of those feet. One was thin, one was medium, one was thick. So the thin sole, and then we used hoof testers afterwards. So the thin soled hoof, like we just put like moderate pressure on the sole of the foot, and the sole, like you could almost poke the hole through it. I'm like, and it was probably about, the thin sole in that case was probably about 5 millimeters to 7 millimeters thick. So it wasn't paper thin, but it was not thick by any means. It was pretty thin, but just the pressure of just like a handshake, a firm handshake on the hoof testers, really imprinted that sole by quite a bit. There was no mistaking that would have hidden one of these ruts. I'm like, it could have easily bruised the corium of the coffin bone. So then what we did then is like we used a torch and we dried it until we could get it to about 20% moisture. And then hoof tested it again, and it gave about half as much as it did when it was saturated. Then we torched it until it was 0, and then it didn't give at all. Even being thin, it didn't give with the hoof with the same amount of pressure. So then we did the medium hoof as well. We soaked it and tested it. And so with the handshake pressure, it depressed the sole about 50%. So that would make it coordinate, like as far as like our thinking is that would coordinate that with, it would be okay if it was to walk across 1 or 2 ruts, but not a big deal. But the cumulative factor of that could have also caused bruising and possible abscessing. And then the thick soled one had really, I'm like, we squeezed pretty hard and it didn't indent that sole that much. I'm like, it still depressed it, but I'm like, it wasn't going to cause big issues as the first 2 would, especially the thin soled one. So that's one of the things when we go from mud to frozen, it's a huge issue. And so somehow I messed up with my order of my videos. So I'm going to pop back and forth a little bit here.
And while you're taking a pause there, let me just switch my networks. It'll take 2 seconds because it's not on the best one. And when I come back, when you start moving again, I'm back. Am I back? You're taking a drink. Are we back? Ida? It should be better. Oh, come on. So you always come back. There, you're back.
There you go.
Okay.
So hands down, finding that what I find to be very, very helpful with those horses when we were doing that, and we were doing some of this study with the thin sole that we took out for our study, we put hoof armor on it to see, like, and let it set to see, like, in that the hoof armor itself, there's a couple of things. One, after the fact, it helps like put like a layer of protection over the top of it. And if you do it, so now prophylactically, like, I suggest people do this often, is when in our seasons, we can be soaking for a couple of weeks and then frozen and that kind of stuff. So most of my people are pretty much familiar with, most of my owners do it themselves. I'm like, it's easy. But I have them hoof armoring their horses, their soles and their frogs right before we start to get into that like constant wet season.
And how often do they have to do that? Like every week, every 2 weeks?
So it depends on the circumstances, but usually I'm like, my suggestion is while we're in the midst of it, staying the way it's like without a break, I'm like once every week to 10 days, just because it just keeps a nice little layer on it. Because I would say it was not like go back to that mud. I'm like, it's not, this is common for us right now.
Yeah.
And so when they're in that kind of stuff, like at least once a week until it starts to get a little bit better. And it really makes a difference with the waterlogged frogs, because frogs are like they hydrate like a sponge almost. And so by the time you get done hydrating the frogs and saturating the sole, if you put the hoof armor on before you start getting into this standing mud, it makes such a huge difference. I'm like, night and day difference. And so like that's probably one of my favorite tools and my favorite preventatives, because it works. I'm like, and it has effect on the fungus too. So it's a win-win. So it definitely doesn't cause anything to go the opposite way. So any questions?
And there
about
isn't
that?
anything actually equivalent to hoof armor on the market, right? I think that's the only product like that.
I think so too. I'm like, I love the stuff. And I would say, I would be surprised. I can't speak for all of my students and my trimmers, but I'm just pretty sure that everybody has that on hand. And most everybody is, the cool part about it is like, I and my students offer it as a service, but if you're going to be doing it once a week, it's really reasonably priced, and it is the easiest self-treatment thing. If you can pick your horse's hooves, you can apply hoof armor. It's super simple.
Yeah, there's a little bit of technique involved in terms of not sticking the glove to your hand.
Well, there's that.
Powdering the foot if you don't have sawdust to throw on it there. But and somebody's asking, when can you start? You can start anytime with hoof armor, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because I have people use it during the mud, and then I have people use it when we get into droughts too, because what it does is it offers an extra layer. If we're droughty and then they're walking around with their hooves, I'm like, there's more abrasion. So I'm like, you can start it anytime. It's never a bad time to start it. And then I'm not even sure if the weather's going to be bad or not, just go ahead and put it on. It's hands down, I've seen it just too many times do awesome good.
And I think he was caught up in a bit of a supply chain problem for a while. Is that solved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they've got it straightened out right now. They had, they were on like a back order for quite a while, and they were getting pretty frustrated. And I think they got the order, but then there's something messed up. But I don't want to say for sure, but I think that they're catching up.
So just like everybody else, they're having supply chain problems too. I mean, and yet there is nothing else. And so if you get your order in and find your hoof armor, I think it's great. Like I said, there was a little bit of a learning curve, but not too big.
It's pretty easy. It went to like, but so I'm like, I have hoof armor still on my chaps that's been on there for 6 years, and it's very attached to you once it's on.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so I'm like, what if I
Somebody's
see it? So
asking if
like,
you
she
sell it
has
on
some,
your website, or where can they get it is the question.
is the best place to get it is right from the Hoof Armor. I'm like, you can go to hoofarmor.com. You can get it from them. And I think I'm going to say maybe Riding Warehouse might have it too. They have it at a couple large distributors, but I'm not, I think Riding Warehouse maybe
Yeah, and I
has
think
it.
it's, I don't know if it's Valley Vet or Vet Supply, one of those. I think I've got.
I
it.
was gonna say one of those vet supply places do. Lots of places carry it. I don't sell it on my website because I just honestly I don't have time to keep up with it. I'm like I have it and I'll get it for people. Like if I'm a client wants it, I will get it for them. But to sell it like massively, I'm like I don't.
Yeah.
It's just I. So
Okay.
any other questions with that?
And Hoof Geeks in Canada, somebody's saying is where you can get it. In Valley
Okay,
Vet.
cool.
Great. Okay, onward.
Okay, let me go back to see it was so pretty mud like this. I put this together late and I thought I had it all in order, but
It's okay.
so the mud also the mud is like a big contributor to it. We already know it softens the soles. And so this again, like the hoof on the left that they've got the hoof pick in, that's when you see that hoof is either has thrush, had thrush, or going to have thrush. There's like it's in one of those categories. If you've got where you've got that tightness all the way to the hairline, I affectionately call it the plumber's crack. But if you've got if you've
Really
got
good
that,
description.
so that one that kind of thing needs to be treated for thrush because whether it has it or not, it's going to have it. So I've got a screen here in a second that will have like some of my favorites, but it's not limited to all because it's like there's a lot of good thrush treatments. Again, that's something though that you can use hoof armor on like this. Can you see? I don't have an arrow, I guess. Thought I had it.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
I
your
do.
pointer.
So if you see this one, like this frog, like it would just benefit big time from the hoof armor itself, because that would callus up what's there and then let it kind of grow in some new. And then plus it would stop some of the moisture from soaking into it. So that would be a big help. Like hoof armor would be a help over here, but I'd want to treat down in here with something. Let me get to the next page and I'll show you what.
So is that
So-
that butt crack that you just mentioned? Is that caused by the mud and the or is that
So the mud exaggerates it. So here's the skinny on this. And so like a lot of times, well, people like they'll have a lot of more thrush in the spring and they're like, oh, I'm like, I can't help it. It's muddy. The fact of the matter is though, is clean mud really is not the problem. It's the mud that gets the urine and the feces in it and stuff and gets mixed up in the footing because fungus loves acidity. So it's not so much the mud, but the mud makes it conducive to the fungus if they're already starting to get some, because fungus loves warm and moist and dark. So like that crack, it's like it's got all of it. It's like you get the moisture in there because they have sweat glands too. So you have the moisture in there, the external moisture, then you've got the dark and covered and it's the perfect storm for it. So it's not, I'm always careful with saying about mud causing the thrush, because clean mud, I'm like, I do a lot of horses in mud and I'm like, and it's clean mud and they have no problem with thrush. But the problem is if the horse like urinates or whatever out where they're walking around and then it gets mixed in with that mud, now you've got a different pH content and everything.
Okay, that makes sense now.
So mud itself has got some healing properties. So I don't, it's not. So, so this is some of the stuff that I like to use for thrush. There are more. And, so this is my criteria for what to use on thrush though, is, if I have a cut, I'll put whatever I'm going to treat their foot with, I'll put it on my cut. And if it burns me, then I don't use it on them. So if I have a hangnail or if I cut myself with my rasp, I'll just pour some treatment in there. And if it hurts, I'm like, don't do it. So like the old days where people would say stuff like bleach and stuff, that's just crazy. Like I've never poured bleach on one of my cuts on purpose. So
right. Yeah.
The first one up here that's on there is Pete's goo. And Pete came up with that mixture, like Pete Ramey came up with that. And I think he's changed that a little bit since then, because since when I first copied this down. And then we make LCS, which is liquid copper sulfate, and the powder stuff, thrush dust. So thrush dust works really good. So for ours that we make, the liquid works good in the dry climates, but the thrush dust works really good in the wet climates because it has clays in it and it's got diatomaceous earth. So it actually pulls some of the moisture out of the foot. So we actually use the thrush dust in if we're going to boot our horses because it kind of wicks the moisture away. And then that you can buy on my website. One of my students makes toe jam. And again, so that's it's basically when I say it's a clay type, so it's like not a salve, but it's like a clay based pack that you use. And a lot of my people love that stuff. And then I had for that plumber's crack, that cow mastitis medicine tomorrow is hands down like the quickest way to clear that up. But I don't think tomorrow's available anymore unless you have a prescription.
So tomorrow
So
is the
that
brand
kind of
name?
got, yeah, it's cow mastitis medicine, and it's a brand name, and it's called, one's called Tomorrow and one's called Today. And so like you can make a whole Abbott and Costello joke about like, I'm going to put the tomorrow in today, but today I'll use the tomorrow. But like it's kind of fun to mess with the clients with that a little bit, but since the pandemic, the tomorrow, you can't get it without a prescription now. And so I was doing a seminar with the American Hoof Association when it was still together, and Dr. Taylor was there. And and had never really knew. I knew that the tomorrow was better than the today, but I didn't know what the differences were. But she raises cows also, so she said that's easy to remember. So that if you use those medicines on cattle, if you use the today, you can still drink the milk today. It's not as strong of as an antibiotic, so you can still drink that. But if you use the tomorrow, you can't get the milk until the next day. You have to wait until tomorrow. So tomorrow is actually stronger than today because you can't drink it until the next day.
Got
But the
it.
today is still available without a prescription, and it works too. It's just not quite as fast as the tomorrow was. And like some other brands, which is the same stuff, is like called Dry Cow. So that's a big thing. And both of those, like that's my go-to. I use either those two in the plumber's crack, or the LCS that we make it's got a little pointed nozzle and it can squirt right in there pretty well too, and it makes a good deal. And then Clean Tracks is another good one. It's just very time consuming. So if someone is not likely to follow through for a good hour, because it takes 45 minutes of soaking in the liquid and then I think 45 minutes in the gas, but Clean Tracks is very, very effective. White Lightning is another one that's pretty good. And then something that anybody could do, and it's actually good for the white line fungus. So if you have fungus in your white line, the 50/50 apple cider vinegar water soaks are good. It's that for me, it's
Do
like
you
I'd
ever
like
use tea tree oil or oregano oil?
yes. So tea tree oil for sure, and there's tea tree oil in the toe jam, and so the oregano oil, yes, but the thrush dust that we make, like it has ground oregano in it. So oregano has very like really good antifungal properties.
Yeah.
So we use oregano in a lot of stuff. So there's a few herbs, and the thrush dust has oregano and some lavender in it, and it also has a little bit of copper in it. So and then toe jam I know has tea tree oil in it, and it may have oregano too, but I'm not positive. But yes. Any questions about any of that stuff?
No, somebody was commenting about, they've also heard of something called oxine.
Yes, that's good too.
And Thrush Ninja.
I don't know what's in Thrush Ninja, so.
Okay.
And
Do you have to be careful that some of the things that they sell for, well, like you said, if you wouldn't put it on your skin, but sometimes you don't, you're not going to put it on your skin, so you don't know. I mean, there's a lot of other more caustic things on the market, right?
Yeah. I don't want caustic things because, so especially, let me pop back to that plumber's crack one again. So when you have something this deep on this, so there's one of two scenarios. Either your frog spine that's on the inside has been ate through, and so that's damaged. And if it's ate through, then when you poke like that, you're poking right to the corium, or your frog spine is damaged. If you happen to put something caustic in there and your frog spine is broke through, then you'll be putting that caustic material right to the inner corium of that foot. And there's just no way that that's okay.
Right.
So I really steer away from anything. I try to stay more in the herbal lines or like clays, but I don't like really caustic things. Like some people think peroxide is okay. And I'm like, I don't think peroxide is so good. And a lot of people like olden days, they treat it with iodine, and the iodine burns like crazy if you put it on a cut, usually. So I really like to keep something that's very effective, but yet not caustic.
Right. Got it. I was going to ask you about iodine, so you answered my question.
So I can't say, like, I had some clients that would use it. And so I can't say that I hate iodine. It burns. And so, and if you happen to have the plumber's crack that goes all the way through, that's putting that deeper than you really want it to go.
Yep.
In my opinion. So, okay. Nope, we did that. Okay. The farmer. So back with the soaked feet and the hard ground. So the hoof on the left has got a bruise on it over here. Bruises like that, like it would be painful just as a bruise, but bruises like that can easily turn into an abscess too, because it kind of gets that blood. It's like a blood blister, but it encapsulates the hoof, and then you'll can end up with a nasty abscess. And then this one over here, another soaking symptom. And if the horse is soaking so much as these retracted soles, so it causes the sole to thin. They've already got kind of thin soles anyway, but it's kind of like if you waterlogged your fingers or you put your hands in dishwater for that long, like your skin starts to suck up too and get pruny. Well, so does their sole. And so that just makes it more vulnerable to sharp things that if they step on it. And so I'd go back again to the hoof armor with that. That's hoof armor is by far my favorite thing to treat this stuff with. Anybody got any questions?
No, but that's a great picture of a retracted sole.
Yeah, it pulls, like it just, yeah.
It's really it's
so
really clear in that picture.
If you squeeze right here with the hoof testers, like you don't even like, so I would have to say I've got a two-part thing. So I don't love hoof testers anyway, because you can make almost anything hurt if you squeeze hard enough. But if you just barely put on hoof testers on this one that's got this sucked in place, like it wouldn't even have to take a handshake that that horse would flinch. It's hoof armor helps a bunch. And so other things are boots and pads. Like one of my favorite people makes these on the right hand side. It's a Surefoot hoof patty. I couldn't help myself. But like, so seriously, there's these fit really good in the cloud boots, but you can trim them to fit any other boot if you didn't have a cloud shape, because they are trimmable. So
Yep.
Wendy, you can speak on that if you wish.
Yeah, we have 3 different densities: soft, medium, and soft, hard, and firm. And we are going to be we're getting the dies to make the size 1 and size 4. So that's coming soon. Right now we have 2s and 3s.
Awesome.
And I have, do you know the Barefoot Bloke in Australia?
The Barefoot Bloke.
Barefoot Bloke. That's his name. I've forgotten his real name. Anyway, they've been using the firm Surefoot boot inserts and they love them. I just shipped a whole bunch over to Australia. So
Yes.
they're really happy with them.
Yes. Like I just had a hoof protection class here, and they were getting to feel those and love those and stuff. So I haven't been out booting horses as much as what I normally would be, but I think these are going to be they're going to be a big plus to all the stuff that's out there.
Yeah, because we're coming into that season now, aren't we? Where your
Mhm.
grass is starting to grow and things start to happen and feet are changing. And that's really, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so a cool part about these Surefoot pads and inserts is we did some preliminary testing with like our professionals group that we get together with. And so part of the stuff I have always had in my head about all of this. And then like Wendy and I got onto a whole horse nerdy conversation about it. But so when the horses stand on the Surefoot pads, that it kind of it changes their proprioception and the way that they recognize their world. And we've noticed that several times. But we got to do one experiment in Texas with the foundered horse that Wendy, we had some prototypes of Wendy's hoof patties. and we put it in we trimmed it, like we retrimmed it. We put it in cloud boots with it had mediums, but you haven't made those yet for here, but
No.
excuse me, we had the medium pads in there with that founder horse, and it went home, and it was always in my mind, and like in as so far, like up to this point anyway, it was working out that way. I wondered how long if we trim the foot and we put it in on a Surefoot boot insert pad, put it in the boot and let them wear it for a day. I wondered how much it would change the nerve ending reception and the proprioception in the foot, so that when we took the boots off, and so they were able to leave the boots off of that horse for a day, and it still kept the same comfort level like it had the boots on. And so
Wow.
we know, I know that particular case happened, but we just haven't got to document enough. So I'm like, my trimmers are out there using these and playing with them and stuff. And like, I tell them, like, we have to document for Wendy, and we get caught up in what we're doing, but not taking any notes. But so there's been a lot of cool stuff that we're doing. And but it did that. Like I wasn't, I was an experiment, but they keep the comfort even after they're off for a bit.
Just really cool.
Does that ring anything with you? Like what?
Yeah, I just think that's really cool. I don't have any horse and boots, right? I put Al in the hard pads, and what I really noticed, because we took those pads that he wore for a couple of weeks to AAP, and they still had spring in them. So
Yeah.
the different densities have different responsiveness, and we're just kind of trying to offer different variations so that people can figure out what their horse likes, because when you only have one choice, that's all you got, right? But if you
Yep.
have more than one choice, the horse then gets to choose. And I think that, it's important to let our horses have some options if they're going to live in boots, as opposed to this is all there is and you're just going to have to live with this. I'd rather
Yes.
say, which one of these do you like better? And so that's why we have a variety of densities.
So this is a little off topic, but like, because like we're having this conversation, and so then my mind goes off into this place. So side off topic, but so I was thinking about like that with the densities and the firm versus the soft. And so if you had, this would be an experiment, plus I'm pretty sure, I'm convinced in my head that would work out really good, is if you had a foundered horse, and a lot of times foundered horses that are foundering will rotate on
Yeah.
one foot and sink on the other, especially if they're a tendency to have a high-low. So so my thinking is just like, it just popped into my head right this second, is my thinking is that you could put a soft foot patty, hoof patty, you know what I'm talking about. You're one of these soft ones, put it in the rotating foot, because that needs to be against the help with the tension on the tip of the coffin bone. And then you could put a firm on the sinking foot, because in order to help a sinking foot, we need to have the pressure in the center of the hoof and let the hoof wall grow down around it. So we would be firmly holding against the bottom of the foot, growing the foot around and again, it's off topic, I apologize.
That's, I hadn't even thought about that, of that having a different pad in each boot based on what's happening with that foot, but that is a really good idea.
What just popped into my head when we were talking about like Al and the firm, it's like, so I apologize to you guys because my tangent, but if you're used to me at all, it's not a surprise.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is the reason we have these boot patties is because of you, Ida. Because you said, can you take your pads and turn them into boot inserts? And we were like, so we have gone down this rabbit hole and produced a product. And so like this idea of having different densities under each foot makes a lot of sense, because what we're trying to do is offer the horse choice and see what's going to work. And why do we have to put the same thing in both boots? We don't. We just don't.
Nope, you don't. You definitely
Right?
don't. So one more quick tangent, because it's like, then I will promise I'll get off the tangents, but so same along the same lines. But when you're talking about high-low feet that are not foundered, but you have high-low feet, and you're trying to biomechanically get the body correct, it might be worthwhile to be able to I would toy with different inserts with those horses too, because you have one foot that's high, which causes a sternal shift,
Yeah.
and one foot that's low. And so you could actually like put the firm, you could really toy around with like, this is a new idea for if any of my students are on here. I'm like, let's get to this, but like start experimenting with the different densities and what you could do with body balance and coordination with body work. So
Yeah, no, that I
So,
think that's a
sorry about
fabulous idea. Is it why not do different densities? And then somebody's asking, do the pads and boots throw off their walk since they're higher than barefoot, harder on horses who bear more weight on up front? So in other words, first of all, wearing a cloud boot, but if a horse is in a cloud boot, the horse is painful. So it's actually going to be really helpful, right? I mean, you don't put horses in cloud boots unless there's a problem.
So I would add to that though. So if they're in a therapy boot at all, they have an issue, but not necessarily. I put horses in therapy boots on occasion for therapy. So because we're trying to change their proprioceptive responses, and we're trying to change different ways that they learn how to use their body. So like the majority of the time that they're in therapy boots, they are painful. So yes. And so but then to answer the second half of that, I'll put horses in therapy boots just because I'm like, I want to do physical therapy with them. So they'll have therapeutic uses of the boots. And again, the surefoot hoof patties are even more brilliant because of the firing of the nervous endings that are in the foot. So yes, so yes, like it can throw them off a little bit, but I wouldn't do anything to throw off their body. So I'd balance what they were wearing if I was doing it for therapy. If they're painful, their body's already off anyway.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Anything
next?
Okay, back to the topic. So if your hoof, it's a bruise like I was showing earlier with that hoof bruise, or even if you suspect your horse has a hoof bruise, and it doesn't have to be this brand name. I just grabbed a picture of this, but Epsom salt poultice is like the best thing ever, for somebody that doesn't like to soak or doesn't have time to soak. That poultice, I'm like, I've had that poultice pull out bruises before that they got any worse than just a bruise, and the poultice never hurts anything unless you have bone showing. If you've got a coffin bone penetration or something, you wouldn't want to put a poultice on it. But Epsom salt poultice on the bottom of their foot can do wonders for pulling out the inflammation and helping that like get over whatever the issue is, bruise or even an abscess. And like we use those for abscesses a lot. It's like soaking times 10. For me, if I soak a hoof for 5 minutes, it's like 10 days. So.
Wow. And of course, I like an Epsom salt bath after I've been out in my garden for 8 hours.
Like Epsom salts are just like, they're great anyways. And then this has got methyl salicylate in it. So it's like, it's got a little bit of analgesic to it too. And then it's wintergreeny. So it's not like you mix that with foot stink though, and it makes a unique odor. Okay. So we talk about spring grasses though. So like, I wanted to talk about the externals first. So what we're seeing, because you'll see the mud affected feet and all that stuff before we'll see spring grasses, because like that's just coming off of winter and whatnot. But the spring grasses are an issue for a couple reasons. So this is from safergrass.org. And so I would really recommend anybody to check out safergrass.org. She has a lot of good information on foraging and all that stuff. But the problem with the spring stuff is when the nighttime temperatures are dropping low, it keeps all the sugar in the root and stuff. The photosynthesis of the sun will bring it to the blade. So like if it's warm enough, it will help it to grow. If not, it just stays there and it's like you're just eating sugar cubes all day. So fall is a dangerous time too. But Katie Watts says if the nighttime temperature is above 40 Fahrenheit, sugar is made during the day before they'll be used up for growth. Otherwise, the morning after, it's just waiting in the blade for them. So
okay, so wait a second, let me see if I understand this. So if we have what those of us from New England call sugar season, because the sap runs in the maple trees because it goes below freezing at night and then warms up during the day. Right? Let's get the sap flowing so you can have your maple syrup, which is really important. That when those temperatures fluctuate from both low freezing to above freezing, there's more sugar in the grass?
Way more sugar in the grass. And the what happens is and I was guilty of this for the longest time, like as the previous schooled horse owner, I always thought that the afternoon would be the safest time to graze them, but it's not. It's the photosynthesis of the sun that actually makes that like more sweet. So you're mixing that. So cloudy days, you have less sugar in the grass, and days like that. So several days of cloud cover, you can have pretty low sugar grass, but the sunshine makes sweeter grass. And when you're bringing all that sugar up from the night before, so that's what makes fall. One of the things that makes fall and spring so dangerous is like, we just had frost the other day, but it got up to 70.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
what we're
then
having right now.
yeah. And then to graze your horses in the afternoon, they've just had them a big bowl of sugar flakes.
So the
that's when
sugar,
it's
so
so
the
bad.
photosynthesis increases the sugar in the grass, and then it's not being used to grow because the temperature goes below. And so then the morning's really bad because there's a lot of sugar in the grass in the morning. That
But the mornings are the safer time. The
Oh, okay.
mornings are the safest time because the sun's not brought it up to the blade yet.
Oh, okay. Wait a second. So
So-
let's see. It's like a thermometer.
It's sort of like that. Yeah.
Okay. So when it's warm, the sugars come up in the grass. And when it's cold, the sugars go down in the grass. So if it's cold in the morning, the sugar hasn't come up yet. So it's safer, but by afternoon it's up and it's not so safe.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Anytime it gets so cold at night, though, I mean, for those plants to survive, and then this is like Katie's site's way better than what I'm saying. I'm just
I've been trying to get her
overviewing,
for a wewebinar, but have not succeeded at this point. Okay.
yeah, I wish she would, because like she knows a lot. But anytime that it gets cold at night, like it's the sugars that keep that grass to survive anyway. So you're adding sugars, like it needs that sugar to survive. So that's why like some native grasses, they're warm season grasses, because they don't live when it gets that cold. So they bloom later, or they grow later, and then they die off earlier because they don't have the sugar to keep them to survive. So anytime it's like frosty and stuff, I'm like we only have really one metabolic horse that lives here, but we treat them all like that because I don't want all of them to be metabolic. So
Yeah.
so we just are very cautious about when they go out. So when it's frosted the night before, we just don't put them out. It's just not worth the chance. Like you could do it. Alex and I were talking before you got here about, it always makes people feel sad about not letting their horse graze, but it's much sadder if you let them graze when they shouldn't, like, and they walk around really sore.
Yeah.
And then one of the ladies that's on here, Laura, that's on this webinar tonight, she just like noticed something. I was really excited between her observation and Jackie the trimmer. So one of her horses is older horse, and like when he was out grazing, he got out a little bit on the grass just recently, and Jackie said his feet no signs of inflammation in his feet, but his eyes started to get inflamed and started to get boogered up again because they started acting up because of the little bit of extra sugar that was happening with the cold season. So inflammation's inflammation. So it doesn't have to just always show up in the feet. But I was pretty excited that both Laura and Jackie caught that, made the connection, and when they had him not go back out on the grass for a couple of days while it was not so cold, his eyes cleared right up. So it's just high sugar is not good for any of us. That's why I'm not eating my cookie in front of you guys.
Right. And just so you know, the hay soakers are we have the first 3 completed now. So we're going to launch it in April. Woohoo.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. So you and I, like, are you bringing one to North Carolina in April?
Oh, I can bring one to North Carolina. That's not a problem. I can, as long as I'm driving, I can pop it in my car. Yeah. Okay.
Let's do it.
Done.
Because that way we can
We can
I
play with it.
show it off to.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We just
So
geek
any
out.
questions
When we
about-
do these webinars, we just geek out with each other. That's part of the problem.
Like, no, I was so excited you're coming to North Carolina though, because then we'll super geek out. Like, and all the students at North Carolina, I'm like, they're geekers too. So we'll have a geek
Everyone's
fest.
invited.
Huh?
Everyone's invited there.
Well, yeah, I'm like, that's open to the public classes. So anybody that wants to hop in and come over, I'm like, That'll be fun.
Cool.
It's in Powell's Point.
I've never been to the Outer Banks. I'm really excited.
Oh, it is so pretty. It's like last year was the first time we ever got to go, and we got to see dolphins and everything.
Ooh.
And then the place where we're having the classes, I'm like, it's right off the sound. So I'm like, you can actually walk out in the boardwalk and still see. It's amazing. So it's really a pretty place to have it. And so subclinical laminitis, back off the tangent again. So subclinical laminitis, what happens? So when you hear that term, like, and sometimes you won't even hear that term because it wasn't even thought about being a real thing up until probably about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Like Dr. Taylor and Pete Ramey were talking about it for years. But so subclinical laminitis is when changes of the feet or the hoof starts to show things, but there's no clinical signs of it. So on this one, and I nabbed this picture off the internet, but I liked it so much because it shows all these arrows point to this white line, and white lines should be as tight as a credit card. And like they should be just skinny. And so this one, so a lot of people would see that and just think that that was the white line, but that white line is thicker than it should be. So that's already a sign that there's changes happening within the hoof with the whole grass, too much grass or too much sugar or starches that's in the grass. So when you see that, you have to start being concerned that they're not having clinical signs yet, but there are changes happening. And one of the things that I say at every class is there's really no such thing as all of a sudden unless it's trauma. So if you're having these changes in your hoof, again, I'll go back to Laura's horse's eye. It's like, so the eye was already starting to get inflamed over the sugar. So maybe the feet didn't show this yet, but the eyes were already showing that they had too much inflammation in them. So when you see those kind of things like that, those are not just things to blow off, because what comes after that would be clinical signs. So I don't know, any questions about any of that?
Does not appear to be.
Okay. I think pretty hoofs are still possible though, because this is a mud soaked foot that's been treated with hoof armor and like got the trim, and it's a happy foot, little mud still in it just for the packing fun. But they are still possible. I think that's really all I had on here for all of us. I think I didn't skip anything.
Well, and the grass management, that is really, really interesting. I wish I could get the Safer Grass lady to come on and do a webinar, because I think
She would be awesome.
Yeah, she's retired. I will work on it. Because we're coming into grass season, and so here we are. Well, no, grass is not the enemy, and I'm really going to take that to task, because we had I was down with Sharon May Davis doing the dissection. And what is the enemy is the way it's managed, the type of grass we grow, the length of grass. Like, she was talking about, and she showed me videos of this one horse that was in the selection, and the foal selection was not the top horse. And so she turned the mare out with the foal in tall grass so that the foal had to really lift its feet, and this thing blew everybody away when it went back for the evaluation, right? So she used the grass to improve the horse's movement.
Yes.
So we think so much of the grass that we have is based on cow grass.
Yes,
and we don't have variation, and she was also talking about browsing as a really important thing to do, and I'm hoping I can get more on that. But cow grass is a problem for horses.
it's a problem for cows too. They're just they don't do the same thing with the cows as that they do with horses. So cows can get laminitis too. It's just not recognized because they're not trying to ride them, and what they're raising them for is for different purposes. But I'm glad you brought that point up, because there's several things. First of all, so humans went high productivity at the cost of whatever it takes to do it. So, and they like pretty. And so when you're having all that stuff that's happening, and you have pretty grass, so mowed grass, so we just had this whole conversation like at my classes this past week, because I'm like, I have the hooves of a horse, and we had horses like this when I was a kid. They would be on several acres. The particular horses that I'm talking about was some of the horses I trimmed when I first started, and they were out on 100 acres, but it was natural habitat. I'm like, and it's in Illinois, so like essentially they were like Mustangs in Illinois, but they had trees, and it was 100 acres that had trees and woods and creeks and rocks and dirt, like and regular grass. It wasn't fertilized grass to be super tall and fattening. It wasn't mowed grass to be super pretty. So they were on a literal, it was a pasture, but it was a pasture of all surroundings. It's like it had everything.
And
those
what we
horses,
call
like,
weeds, which they
yes,
call
like,
herbs.
yes, I agree. I agree. The only weed I mow down the cockleburs is to keep them out of the horse's hair and eyes. But
Right.
otherwise, I'm like, when I mow our pastures for that kind of stuff, I mow that at 6 to 8 inches tall. I don't mow them short, because the taller the grass, the less sweet it is. And so the horses on that pasture, they had an old stud, and he would run with his mares. And so when he died, they donated his legs to me. And he was, I was going to say he's maybe 25 years old or in that range. And he had never been trimmed, because like his job was just to do those horses. And when I dissected his feet, they were perfect. I'm like, they were perfect. There was no sign of anything that had happened. And definitely they weren't Mustangs, but they lived in Illinois. So they had the mud too. They had the snow, the ice, but they had so much variety of terrain that like there wasn't any issues, and they were moving all day long to do it.
Right,
So
right. And
that's-
then apparently, and again, Sharon May Davis, because she's such a wealth of information, and she was talking about how horses browse for at least 20% of the day, meaning eating trees and things. And if we don't have browsing, actually it affects not only their gut, but their feet and the cartilage in their nostrils changes when they browse.
Yeah.
I mean, it was wild.
Yep.
Right? When they're eating grass, it goes one way, and when they browse, it goes another. And so, so many fields, we won't let the horses chew on the trees, which of course, then they kill the trees and have no shade. But how do we create an environment where there's some browsing so that they have up and down and variation? And it's the variation, I think, that we've lost. We've become monoculture type of grass, and, get rid of those weeds. So
it's
yeah,
a huge piece.
Yeah.
So I had another lady bring up to me, and she's a really talented, smart body person. And so like everybody, like in super ultra domesticated situations, people put up like the hay feeders and stuff, which is ridiculous because it's not natural. But then her point is that that when people insist on putting all the food on the ground, that's just as bad. Basically the same thing as like what Sharon May was talking about, because like if all they ever do is eat with their head down, they don't use all the stuff, because horses like those horses I was talking about, like they will eat bark. Our horses eat bark, and we don't get all alarmed when they eat the bark off the trees and stuff. It's like most of them are fast growing trees and they'll replenish, but they'll eat bark off the trees. They eat leaves off of the trees. They'll eat sticks off of the ground. I'm like, they might one time have their head up in the air eating the leaves off. One time they might be at the mid range of the trunk and they're chewing on the bark. And sometimes people are like, oh, like the horses are tearing stuff up. But I used to take branches to some of my clients that were in boarding barns that had boring turnouts. I would take big log branches for the horses to have something to do, because they need, that's what they do.
It's a natural part of their diet and their behavior.
It is a big time. And like, so it makes sense. I'm like, I didn't know about the nose cartilage thing, which I'm excited.
It was so fascinating. That was
like, so jealous. I'm so jealous. You guys are all there, like, and I'm like, dang it.
Yeah. That was such a fascinating thing that she could tell how much browsing versus grazing, and that this cartilage changes. And I was like, wow, that's just really fascinating. Yeah. So that whole idea of if they only put their heads down, if they never eat anything in different heights, they're only, it's mono grazing, right? Instead of variable grazing. And so
that made so much sense when she said that. So it's like, no, we shouldn't cause them to have to put their heads up, but we shouldn't always cause them to have to put their heads down. Sometimes they eat on a hill, so they'll be like they're like mid range. Like they just, if you watch them out in their, when they can do what they need to do, they do all kinds of cool things.
Well, and I've started feeding the hay. I take it a little further out and I feed the hay on the slope,
Yep.
right? So
Like
that they're standing on a slope when they're eating. So they're not, it's not just standing in one square flat position eating. And
Yeah.
we're actually thinking about how we can create more eating environments so that they're doing different things. Because I don't have trees to give them. I don't.
Yeah.
Not in those pastures, although down below there's a possibility, but that would require a lot of fencing work and I'm not up for that at this point.
You could always you could always check with like somebody that has like limbs that they're cutting out, like safe limbs for them to chew on.
Safe
And then
limbs,
just-
that's important. No cherry, no walnut.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Like that, and that is a big thing. So like, so far, you know what? I'm like, our horses love to chew on the mulberry trees. They chew the bark and then they shake the berries off and they'll eat the berries.
Smarties.
Like if you had an insulin resistant horse, that could be bad, but our horses, like they have enough variety that it doesn't bother them. They can do that. But
Right. Because they're going to
but-
get a lot of antioxidants in those little berries too.
So it's like that's what horses are made to do, though. They're made to have several enzymes to do several different things besides just one thing all the time. And so when the spring grasses come out, it makes a difference, like because our horses are domesticated, so they're not, but like horses in the wild, well, like they have their all their forage is available year round. So there's never a shock to their system and they're having to walk and work to get it. So like they might have to paw through the snow to get some or whatever they do. So it's just it's a transition. So for us with the spring grasses and the fall grasses, we have too many variables to the types of grasses that we have that make them extra sweet.
And then of course, don't we see greater hoof growth when the spring grasses come?
Yep. So there's two things I think that contribute to the greater hoof growth. We have the spring grasses come up, but even the horses that are not out on grasses, and I had one of the first mentors I ever rode with taught me this. And so I'm like, I've kind of always kept it in my mind and it always seems to come true. But because hooves are keratin and hair is keratin, he said, when horses start to get their winter fur, their feet start to slow down. And when they start to shed, their feet start to speed up. And it really made sense to me, Mike. And so since he told me that, maybe it's not scientifically proven, but it is pretty much at least anecdotal. So whenever
Yeah, and it's a good way to think about it though, right? That with the hair coat changes, the feet change in terms of their growth cycle.
Yep.
Cool.
So I find it to be pretty neat.
That's really neat. All right. So I got anything to help counteract white clover. White clover. We had tons with my mares and she had lots of phlegmy stuff for a few weeks. And I know, not related to hooves, but yeah, the white clover drool, it's a fungus on the clover and we have it. And some horses it's worse than others. And I don't know. Do you know a solution to that?
I don't know a solution to that. I will say though, that I've known two horses and they're pink skinned horses that can get a photosynthetic reaction to it as well, besides just that, and like bad enough to founder them. So
Seriously.
And so it's not common, but I've known, and both of them were paints and they were pink skinned horses. And they like, not only did they get the drools, but they welted up. And so, it's outside clover. That's what they say. That's the fungus on the outside clover. That's the worst.
What's
they call it up
clover?
here. Huh?
What's outside clover? Is that white
It's the
clover?
white clover, but so there's different kinds of white clover, and I'm not 100% versed on this, but the outside clover seems to have it's white, but it has like a little like purple line around the inside there. So if you look it up and just to see what it looks like, there's a couple different kinds of white clover. And I didn't know anything about it, but it's like the vet diagnosed it with outside poisoning or outside clover poisoning because it had the drools, but like there's some horses will have a photosynthetic reaction to it. So but I don't know anything to help not have that, because it seems like no matter if it seems like they get the fungus on the clover in the dry or the wet. It doesn't seem to matter.
It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter because we've had dry summers and wet summers and we still get the drool. And just some horses, it's more affected than others. And I don't know why.
I agree. It's like, I don't know. I like I said, other than the skin part with where it got the
I did a webinar
don't think
once in the summertime for Surefoot and the horses had the drools and the Europeans were freaking out because they hadn't seen it before. and they didn't know what it
Yeah.
was. They just don't have it over there.
Yeah.
And so somebody's asking if sunburn if that correlates with sunburn, the clover, but I don't know.
I don't think so, because I've seen horses like get sunburn in a warm spring where there's not even clover even out. But if they've got pink skin, they're more susceptible to sunburn.
And
So some of my
and
people are.
I've seen horses that in Australia, I'll never forget these horses in Australia because they stood out in the sun all day long and they didn't sunburn at all. But he fed them a huge bucket of chaff and he added yogurt and bananas and all kinds of things. And so I think sunburn can be related to diet and toxicity.
Oh, I think so too.
Yeah.
It's like, well, humans, like, so they always classify it in humans. It's like, they always ask you what kind of medications you're on, but the whole medication thing is like, medications are often derived from certain plants. And so they could be having something in a plant that could actually cause you to be more photosynthesis, whatever.
Photosensitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But,
So I don't know that
yeah.
the sunburn is related to clover, but I think it's related to, I think toxicity in the system, and reaction, like a synthetic reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a big part. Yeah.
Cool. All right. If anybody else, let's see what other questions. If you get sunburn, maybe you get clover inflammation. No, I don't see. I think I don't know that you can correlate sunburning with the clover. I think they're two different things.
I do too. Like, you can get sunburnt in the wintertime, like almost
Yeah.
snowburned. So anything that would make the horse more susceptible to ultraviolet rays, being
Right.
like the position of the sun or whatnot like that, would be an issue. But it's not connected with the clover.
Right. The clover is just its own issue. And I mean, there's probably a possibility that if a horse sunburns and has the clover, that it's that horse is either more sensitive to something, but I wouldn't say they're
Yeah.
related. I see.
I think, yeah, I don't think the clover increases the chance of it, but it could be connected together. It's like, not necessarily connected, but it could be coincidental findings.
Yeah.
But I think some of it, like you said, some of it is like toxicity and different diet and all that kind of stuff. And I think some horses, like, genetically might have less melanin or whatever that would make that protect their skin from the sun.
Because certain colors are more susceptible to burning, like chestnut.
Cremellos are a certain color, like cremellos.
Yeah.
Like, but then they're genetic. They're genetically different as well.
Or
so-
recessive, right? Aren't cremellas recessive?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
All righty. Well, once again, Ida, this has been awesome. And like this bit about the sugars, I think in the grass is really fascinating. I will go and work to see if I can get that lady to come and do a webinar. I hope she will, but no promises.
Well,
and it's
hopefully she
always-
will. I was like,
Go ahead.
hopefully she will. I was fortunate enough to get to see her several years ago. She did a talk at the Whole Horse Symposium in Missouri. It's been, I'll apply maybe 9 years ago or something, but
Wow.
she's a wealth of forage information. Like, she knows her stuff.
Yeah. And it's hard to find somebody that 6-year-old is very excited to say hi. Hi, 6-year-old. The whole grass thing and what we sow in our fields. And, I remember Joyce having healthy weeds that you could sow in your fields. And I think she has something else right now on her website. I can't remember what it is, but, we really need to rethink what the grass population is in our fields that we're grazing on, as opposed to just, making it look really pretty and have that lovely green field.
Yeah.
Think more
I think
about.
I had a couple of my clients actually, like in Texas, like they went to they reseeded their fields. They looked up all the native grasses, and like I couldn't even begin to explain all what they explained, but how they each interact with their root system, the native grasses, and then the minerals and stuff. It was a whole fascinating thing. I'm like, I didn't retain enough of it to share, but
Yeah.
but
it's true. Yeah. Because they work together. So
yes.
Yep. Somebody's saying hogweed's an example of a plant that causes photosensitivity. Yeah. And yes, that's true. And so there's a toxicity in that plant that could contribute to it.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Ida, once again. And I am so looking forward to seeing you next month. I've already got my room booked, and I'm going to drive down. I'll bring my hay soaker with me, and you can see it in action. Thanks
Very
everybody
cool.
for joining us. And just remember, you can find this and all the other webinars on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel. Please tell your friends that's where to find them. And they are all free. We had somebody ask yesterday, is like, can I get the first hour free on the webinar? It's like, you can have all of it free because it's all free.
Awesome.
And tomorrow we have Melissa Deal at 1 o'clock, and we're going to talk about oh crap, I forgot her title again. We're going to just talk to Melissa. We'll let her tell us. It's late. It's an hour later for me than for you. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye, Ida.
Yeah. Night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.
Yeah, bye, Ada.